I wake up and sometimes I'm in a cold sweat.
He was a boy sent to the battlefields of Vietnam, scarred and wounded in war, still haunted 30 years later.
They just opened up on us all at once from everywhere.
Desperate for help, he turned to this.
Let's focus on that.
An unusual remedy, some call remarkable, to treat troubling memories and heal them.
Feels good. I feel myself want to smile inside.
What is this controversial therapy? Can it work?
Someone who's stored up a horrible memory for a lifetime can go through 2 sessions and suddenly they're better?
Hoda Kotb with Healing the Past. From our studios in Rockefeller Center, here is Stone Phillips.
Good evening. It has taken this country a generation to heal the wounds of the Vietnam War. But decades after the fighting has ended, many veterans are still fighting an internal war, still reliving the horrors of what happened there. Tonight, the story of a controversial approach to help those still carrying the emotional burden of Vietnam. It's unusual and to some improbable, but thousands have tried it. And for the soldier you're about to meet, it is the only thing that has soothed 30 years of suffering. Here's Hoda Kotb.
3 figures of soldiers representing the war in Vietnam. For Mike Werner, they symbolize a moment in time that has consumed him for more than 30 years. And during those years, he remained frozen in a moment, in a nightmare that would not let him rest.
I was at my wit's end and I just didn't want to go on anymore. And when I went out to Mom and said, take me to the doctors. And that was the day I first went to seek help.
In May of 1998, he was admitted to a veterans hospital. There, Mike Werner, a 49-year-old Vietnam veteran, would undergo an unusual, some say revolutionary kind of therapy that offers hope to tens of thousands of trauma victims, including war veterans.
What would be the best you can hope for coming out of this treatment?
To find me is my goal. I lost me, I want to find me.
The person who Mike once was radically changed more than 32 years ago with the flash of a gunshot.
They just opened up on us all at once. And a lot of people were hurt and killed quickly.
Vietnam, 1966. Mike's unit was ambushed. Bullets were flying. One hit Mike in the face and disfigured him. That experience has haunted Mike Werner for the past 30 years.
Same thing over and over, every night. And I wake up and sometimes I'm in a cold sweat and shiver and you find yourself trying to dig under the covers. When I wake up in the night, my covers look like I've been wrestling an alligator.
It wasn't just the nightmares and the flashbacks. Over the period of 3 decades, Mike's life slowly started to fall apart. He went through 2 divorces, lost his job, and for the last 2 years, he wandered from motel to motel, drowning himself in TV images.
I stopped caring about anything. The more things got harder, the more I piled stuff on top of myself.
In April 1998, Mike reached a breaking point. He thought about committing suicide and was desperate for help. He was willing to try anything, but could this possibly be the answer to 30 years of misery? It's called EMDR and stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing. At first glance, it looks something like hypnosis, but it's not.
It does look silly, and very often when I'm starting EMDR with somebody, I'm kind of expecting them to be put off by that.
It was mostly a word-of-mouth thing.
Dr. Susan Rogers has treated several hundred war veterans who, like Mike, have suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. Though no one knows exactly how EMDR works, the theory behind it is that the patient's eye movements stimulate the left and right hemispheres of the brain and somehow unlock the painful memory that has become frozen. Some doctors say it can take just 1 or 2 sessions.
Is the idea that moving your eyes back and forth will dislodge a stuck memory in your mind?
Yeah, that's the basic idea.
It strikes me as just hard to believe. Someone who's stored up a memory, a horrible memory, for years and years and years can go through 2 sessions and suddenly they're better?
Yes, they're better on that memory. It's kind of like that's not the whole ball game, but it may be some crucial innings.
But would this strange-looking therapy work for Mike Warner? He went into the EMDR session thinking it would not help him. In fact, he said he thought it was nuts. Both Dr. Rogers and Mike allowed our cameras into his first EMDR session.
And tell me what you notice now.
If EMDR works, Mike will put his traumatic past behind him. His distress levels should go down and his physical pain diminish. As the session starts, Dr. Rogers asks Mike to recall the moments after he was shot.
I see myself laying on the ground and reaching up and realizing that I'm hit.
Okay, stop there. Think of the scene again. Focus on that and go.
It's late in the afternoon. Somebody's finally gotten to me. They're pulling me back.
Go without this time.
Dr. Rogers waves her hand over and over during the 50-minute session. Each time, Mike recalls new bits and pieces of old memories.
Riding on a helicopter. Medics talking to me, telling me I'm going to be okay.
Mike talks about the surgery to repair his face and stop the bleeding. It is 12 minutes into the session, and Mike tells the therapist his distress level on a scale of 1 to 10 is high, at a 7.
My neck is tightening up.
It's not that Mike can't remember events from later in the day he was shot. After all, he had already described the helicopter that evacuated him and the surgery that followed. But the one thing that he keeps thinking about, keeps reliving, keeps obsessing over, is the very moment he was shot.
I want you to kind of bring up the scene.
And now, for the second time, Dr. Rogers asks Mike to go back to that traumatic moment.
I'm seeing before it happened now. The first shots are being fired. They hit the ground.
More memories emerge from that day.
I can hear the rustling behind me. They're coming to get me.
Mike says his distress level is now higher,
Where's the distress level?
a 9.
Feel some tension?
Still tension in my neck.
And the pain in his neck is getting worse.
And just tell me what you notice.
Dr. Rogers asks Mike to go back to the scene where he was going to be evacuated. Mike is about to remember details of that moment that he has never remembered before.
This is the first time I've actually ever seen the end of the battle. I never knew the battle ended. I just knew that I was out of it.
For Mike, seeing the end of the battle was a major step. He also says that the pain in his neck has gone away. A few minutes later, Dr. Rogers asks Mike to go back to that scene still a 4th time, but to keep in mind that the battle was over.
The scene hasn't changed, but I feel more comfortable looking at it now.
Okay.
My eyes are starting to hurt.
Mike's eye was injured when he was shot, and it was now starting to bother him. So Dr. Rogers switched to tapping Mike's knees, a method she says can work almost as well as hand waving.
What do you notice now?
I just noticed a feeling of relief.
On a 0 to 10, where would you put it?
3.
For the first time in more than 30 years, the man who has been haunted by the horrors of war is no longer reliving the experience of being shot. He seems to have distanced himself from the nightmare.
I feel relieved. I feel that it's over.
Okay.
Feels good. I feel myself wanting to smile inside. I haven't done a lot of smiling in a lot of years.
What was good about that day you were shot?
Well, I lived. And you don't see that, you know, when you're in your nightmare. I mean, you know you live, but you don't see it.
During our treatment and afterwards, he was saying that he was able to kind of run the whole event kind of like a movie. He seemed to be more able to say, yeah, it was an event in my past, it was a terrible event, but it's not going on now, and it doesn't define everything about me.
They talk about when your eyes go back and forth, it actually dislodges things from your brain. Did you get that sensation?
It helps you to focus on everything instead of just particular events. And as you go through that whole situation, it brings everything out into the light instead of just the bad stuff.
As a result of the therapy, Mike says his nightmares vanished. He was so happy with the results, he immediately wanted another session, this one to deal with the problems concerning his self-image.
To this day, I shave in the shower. I still don't look in the mirror to shave.
Why? What do you see?
An ugly person with a wicked scar on his face. I don't think that they realize how badly it really bothers me.
And so the second session begins.
Think of that.
Mike relates the memories of being called Scarface by friends and relatives after he was shot in the face during the war. He rates his stress level at a 10.
The more I think about what my friends have done to me, the angrier I get.
Okay, let's focus on that.
I've grown a big, ugly, scraggly beard. But at least now people aren't calling me Scarface. I'm so tired of the years of it. I wish I was just dead. I want it to go away.
You okay to go with that? Just think of it again. Here we go.
As he thought once again about people calling him Scarface, Mike came to a new realization.
It's still upsetting, but I don't feel the anger or the rage.
So how would you describe the feeling now?
More like a bad memory. Just a day in my past.
Seems too good to be true. And some critics say it is. They say EMDR is nothing but conventional therapy dressed up with bells and whistles. They call it hocus pocus, that it is unscientific. And they say desperate people will believe in anything. Could this just be a placebo effect? I mean, somebody wants so badly for this to work. They believe that it should work. And in effect, it does work.
So I'm working with combat vets. These guys are kind of notorious for being skeptical, and yet we're seeing very good results with them.
Okay, so we're talking about years of nightmares and flashbacks and horrible suicidal thoughts. And now, boom, no flashbacks, no suicidal thoughts and no nightmares. Some people might say, geez, that seems impossible. It seems hard to believe.
I was one of the skeptics. I know that the process works. It's not just go in and have EMDR and you're cured. I'm not cured. I'm better. But the EMDR helps you to look at things differently.
Well, when you look in the mirror now, what do you see?
It's getting better. I mean, I actually sometimes stand and shave in front of the mirror now.
Mike not only looks in the mirror when he shaves now, but after 30 years of suffering, he says he has a new outlook. And unlike those figures of soldiers on the windowsill that remain the same, they represent something else to Mike, a past that is no longer experienced every day. In a sense, a past that is indeed in the past. You told me last time that what you hoped at the end of this road, the end of the EMDR, was to find you. Did you find you?
No, I haven't found all of me, but I found some of me. On my way.